Have you dreamed of bigger things for your life? Then you are in the right place. Each week, you will be given tips on how to change your inner dialogue, conquer your goals, and ways to step into a higher version of yourself. I'm your host, Lauren Kubat. I'm a motivational speaker who hosts personal development events. I'm a sought-after fitness instructor, a wife, and a mom of 2 young boys. I'm obsessed with all things personal development, and I believe anyone can achieve the life they want. Let the Become Your Vision podcast be the inspiration you need to step into greater things. Now let's go. Hi guys, welcome back to the show, or maybe welcome to the show. Maybe you've never listened to Become Your Vision before. I appreciate you tuning in. Whether you're on a walk or getting ready for the day or driving, I am sending you all the love. So today we have a interesting conversation with Emily Eldh. I met her literally last week. It's amazing how you can just meet somebody and instantly click. And I realized that I wanted her on the podcast. Her story is interesting in the sense that she suffered with an autoimmune disease, specifically Hashimoto's. And she and her mom and her father basically had to be her own advocate to figuring out what was going on with her. And she was suffering from fatigue and weight gain and mood swings, and they just knew something wasn't right. So for her, she discovered going plant-based, vegan, and gluten-free really helped heal her and heal her gut. Now, I do want to say, since interviewing my friend a couple weeks ago, Heather McWright, episode 89, if you've not listened to that episode, you must listen to that episode, that for Heather, intuitive eating and following this intuitive way of eating really helped her. And it's funny because Emily, she was told by doctors that were like, oh my, nothing's wrong. And she followed her intuition. She's like, something is not right. And she continued on this journey of research to figure out what was going on with her body. And my job as a podcaster is to interview different people with different stories, and that may follow different ways of eating, also known as diet. I want to be really careful with using the word diet and just looking at it as just a way of eating. Diet culture has made the word diet to be such a yucky word, but it's just a way of eating. And my job as a podcaster, like I said, is to give you all this different information and for you to figure out what works best for you and to be your own advocate. So I know you're really going to enjoy Emily's story. We are also doing a giveaway where she's giving away a dozen of her banana chocolate chip muffin drops. They are so good. So make sure you're waiting to the very end where we talk about the giveaway. Okay, enjoy. Hi guys, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in today. You could have picked any other podcast, but you picked mine to listen to, and maybe it was the title of this podcast. But I have Emily Eldh here. We actually met at a women's entrepreneurial event last week, and we just clicked right away. So let me give you a little insight on who Emily is. She is 24 and she's the owner of the Muffin Drop, which makes vegan and gluten-free mini muffins. Her recipe, specifically the classic banana chocolate chip, was built through years of autoimmune adversity and the urge to create a product which makes plant-powered ingredients taste delicious. Officially a business in 2021, Emily brings the muffin love all around the Charleston area. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, you read that perfectly. That was an awesome intro.
Thank you. I read what you sent me. So
honestly, sounded amazing.
Yeah. Last week it was so she was serving up these muffins, these like mini muffins, and they are so good. But I actually waited to have my muffin because I always have shit in my teeth, like always, always when I eat. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait to hold this or wait to try it till afterwards. So I was in my car. I was like starving after this event and I tried these. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so good. We connected right away. And then I was like, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? And here we are. So I appreciate you coming on.
I mean, thanks for having me. When you were
Yeah.
saying that you had a podcast, I was immediately like, oh my gosh, one, I'm going to listen to it. And then two, when you said, can you be on it? I'm like, oh my God, I would love to.
Yay. So it's just cool how if you take the opportunity to like go out and quote unquote like network or just like introduce yourself, I think it can lead to so many opportunities you don't even think about. And we actually found out too, like we know so many people in this area. We were talking about Megan Broderick. She's like does the Drink a Dash, and she's amazing, and how you knew her, and it's just crazy how we know a lot of the same people.
Yeah. And I feel like I've found in Charleston, what's especially like amazing about the community is that, I mean, it is pretty small, but within that small community, there's so many people that like really appreciate small business and also so many small business owners. So once you're kind of in that space, I feel like everybody here really lifts each other up, and it just makes networking like so exciting and so fun, and just like something I never even knew could be like such a fulfilling process.
Yes, totally what you're saying. I don't know if this is like everywhere. I'm sure it's not, but like I'm finding that same thing. It's like everybody's like looking to build you up and giving you advice on what to do next or connect you with somebody who is willing to help you. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't feel like icky. It really feels like an organic connection.
Exactly. And my whole life, we've moved around pretty much since I was born. And I can very confidently say that Charleston is like the first place where I've really felt that extreme community aspect and really felt super comfortable, not only being my full self, but like really embracing everything around me and feeling embraced by everything around me. And I think that's why going to college here and then living here post college is just so enjoyable for me. And every single day, I'm like, I can't even believe I get to live here and
Right.
work here. And, it's amazing.
Where are you originally from?
So it's kind of complicated, but I'll keep it short.
Yeah.
But most recently, 8th grade on, so I'm 24 now. So 8th grade, that's probably like 14, moved to Connecticut, Westport, Connecticut, and was living there pretty much up to the last few months when my family home sold. And now we're completely moved here. But up until that point, my dad's job always had us moving throughout my life. So I was born in Chicago, then lived in Florida for a little bit, then moved to England, and then came to Connecticut, and now we're in Charleston. So been kind of all over the place, but we've made it.
That's so cool. What did you spend a long time in Chicago?
I was born there, so that was probably the smallest place that I lived, but that was really where my parents like got or spent their early marriage time. So they had me and my older sister, and then we moved to Florida when I was like 2 or 3.
Okay. So I'm from northwest suburbs of Chicago. So that's why I was asking.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So let's go back to your backstory. So you created, we're going to get into like the business aspect and how it came to be. You created these amazing, delicious, gluten-free muffins, but tell us how your autoimmune issues started. You were feeling fatigued and you're suffering like mood swings and weight loss. Can you go back to when you discovered you had an autoimmune disease?
For sure. So thank you for saying they're amazing, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's been honestly a very long road with the autoimmune issues, but it specifically started probably around 16 years old. And at that point, I had been living in a new area for probably around a year. So I guess sophomore year is when you're 16. So I moved to Connecticut when I was 8th grade. So, whenever you move into a new space, there's obviously a lot of emotion that goes into it, a lot of change that goes into it. So I think there was a lot going on. Not only that time, I'm like becoming an adolescent and, going through physical changes. So you're really experiencing, as we all know, a lot in that preteen, early teen era. And so I think with all of that combined, I started feeling a lot of strange things, physiological things. So I was gaining weight. Actually, I was feeling super tired, and not just normal tired where you're like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep. I really was like falling asleep at 3 p.m. and like couldn't even keep my eyes open, and I couldn't go on a walk. I couldn't go on a run. I really wasn't able to work out. At the same time, I was having a lot of stomach problems. So pretty much anything I would eat, I would get major, not only inflammation, but pain in my stomach, all those, pretty uncomfortable things. So it was obvious to me that something was going on. And that kind of was the beginning of my journey with really getting in tune with my body. But it was a really long road until I felt super confident. But basically, I went to, normal hospital, as you probably would when you feel like something's really off. And that was the first sort of experience that I had with, conventional medicine not necessarily working with me, because I went to a really, really nice professional doctor and they told me nothing was wrong with me. And I was like, no, like, I know something's wrong with me. Like I'm like 30 pounds overweight. I'm super sad. I'm really tired. Like there's all these things that were so uncharacteristic to me. And, my mom, as I was kind of explaining when I spoke at the women's event, she was, super amazing. And she really didn't take no for an answer. So when she heard I was having problems, she was like, we're going to explore all of our options. So that was kind of the first time we delved into holistic and functional medicine. So taking like a full body approach, really specifically testing my blood and seeing what might be the problem. So the first holistic doctor we went to, that was when he tested my blood and was like on a different scale than I guessed it was tested before. And he was like, you're so sick with Hashimoto's, which is a form of thyroid issues. And he was like, you're so sick, you should be in the hospital. And I was like, thank God, like somebody finally saw me. I feel heard. And that was the first time I ever sort of got into eating plant-based and cutting out gluten, also got on a natural form of thyroid medication, and really started looking at, okay, how can we reverse all these problems that have happened?
Right.
And I just in that process really became addicted to using food as medicine, but also natural remedies to heal what was going on.
Oh my gosh. Were you through this process? Were you becoming, when do you think it like started, and how many, was it years before you were like found out like, hey, you have Hashimoto's?
I don't think it was years. I think it was probably, I'm kind of the type that once something feels wrong, I'm immediately like, okay, like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to fix this? Like, and even at 16, I think I was like, yeah, we gotta see what's going on. So I don't really know if it was a super long period of time. I don't have a specific, duration, but I would assume it was that year that we really started exploring. So I probably started feeling sick early on in the year. And then by mid-year, we were probably looking at all of our options, but the journey's been very long in really figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Even just the process of figuring out a lot of conventional techniques weren't going to work for me. I'm sure that took months, or there's been many doctors along the way, many different things that I've tried. So the process has been, trial and tribulation for many years.
Well, was it your mom's idea to go to a holistic doctor?
Yeah. And I honestly wish I could give you like the first thing that made her think to do it. But, I think a lot of mothers, or a lot of just people who care about, you and your family, she really researched it. So she probably was on Google, for instance, just being like, what is thyroid disease? Like, what is Hashimoto's? How do you treat Hashimoto's? So probably around the time that I wasn't getting an answer for what was going on with me, she probably searched and found that there were other remedies that could figure it out. And we found, our first holistic doctor in my town in Westport. And I don't think the first one worked, but it showed us there was a new way. And then we went to a second one. And, there's been many along the way. And I'm super grateful that I had the option and to explore these things, and the opportunity, and a mom who really, really listened when I said, I'm not good. Like, somebody help me out.
And that's amazing. You had like an advocate in your corner, especially being so young. You're like, I don't know. And she's like, okay, we're going to figure this out. And she was truly like in your corner, like, let's go. So that's amazing. And I know there's a people that don't discover that they have an autoimmune disease until later in life. And they're like, oh my gosh, like this is what it has been all along. Do you remember if they did the holistic doctor? Because you went to a traditional doctor and like, there's nothing wrong with you, tests are fine. Do you know what they did differently at the conventional doctor versus the holistic doctor?
Yeah, it was totally a way of how they tested my blood. So something
Okay.
about the first time that it tested me along with like a bunch of other people. And I'm going to explain this to the best of my ability. And I know the gist. So I think the first time I was tested, it was grouped in with the average of certain amount of people and what their levels look like, quote, normal or
Mm,
normal levels, you know? And I think along this journey, it's been a really big discovery of every person's body is so different. So really, what is the average level, quote unquote, for per person? And the next doctor I went to tested me on a much more specific level. So it wasn't just about, okay, like there's 300 people who have this and that's normal. I think there was, different levels to which what could be an issue. And I think that's when we found it. If I explained that correctly, I think it had something to do with a bell curve. But I just realized that in the second time, it was way more specific. So, he might have just had a better grasp than the first person that I went to. Who knows what it was, but it
right.
definitely showed that there was totally, totally a problem.
Yeah, so interesting. And it's like, I've talked about like therapy before, and the same goes to anything. It's like, oh, group fitness. You try somebody and you don't like them, you don't have to stick with them. Like, you might
Okay.
not vibe with their style, you don't might not vibe with their personality, and keep going until you find somebody. Just don't quit just because you try the first one and it didn't hit, you guys didn't hit it off or whatever. But I think that is a lesson to be learned here. It's like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something different, and, not to take no for an answer.
Exactly. And honestly, there's been so much to this entire experience, but it really became such a passion of mine and not only was I sort of desperate and I was
Mm,
so eager to heal, but it really did become a passion to research and to explore this entire disease and see that, oh, plants can heal in a certain way or supplements in a certain way or different techniques. I really wasn't opposed to any of the options because I was just so down and ready to feel better. And I think when you're pushed up to like such a wall that you just don't feel well, you're like, okay, what can I try here that's going to make me feel better? And I was really lucky to be able to explore a bunch of different options in that process.
right. Now, was it so hard with, your friends? You're 16 and maybe they don't have the same issues. Was it hard to kind of like, you know, I guess go to parties and be able to like eat what they eat and not have to worry? But you did, because you're like, I don't feel good. This does not feel good. How did you handle that?
That is the best question because literally during that period of time, it's the loneliest thing you can ever deal with. You're so different to your peers because everybody around you is eating sandwiches, pizza, all these things that I remember when my doctor was like, okay, you need to cut out gluten. I was like, what the heck does that mean? Like, I'm 16. Like, what is that? How does that work? And I grew up on pasta, bread, like all the
Right.
starches, all the things, and having to grasp one, eating differently than other people. But then on top of it, I definitely shouldn't have been going out with people around me and, experiencing something that is a silent disease because you were mentioning how so many people don't even realize that they have autoimmune. That's the
Hmm.
biggest thing. Like, it's not a physical ailment. You know what I mean? People can't see that you have a broken arm or something like that. So it's something that you're internally dealing with and you're struggling with. And it's difficult to describe to people around you, like, oh, this is what I'm going through, because people can't physically see it and they can only sort of experience what you say is going on. But, if they can't see it, it's difficult for people to understand sometimes. So it was definitely super, super challenging at that time. But as I've gotten older, it's become something that I love to educate people about, and also have had so much fun in the process of the pain, figuring out fun ways and cool ways and, positive ways to deal with the struggle. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely pretty isolating back then, but we've grown into the
Grown
struggle.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine it'd be extremely frustrating. And then your friends are like, well, what's going on? And I talked about this on a different podcast. It's like, you always want to try to do what you want to fit in at that age, right? You want to fit in and you want to do what your friends are doing. And it's like, oh, and then when you're being questioned about like not eating something, like, oh, are you not eating that pizza because you're on a diet or whatever? And you're like, no, it makes me feel like crap. Like, it's not just about that. So I could see how that could be extremely frustrating. And then especially you're talking about 8 years ago, I feel like everything you can find gluten-free in all the things now. There's so many options, but 8 years ago, I think they were still trying to figure all of that out. And now it's like it's come such a long way.
Yeah. And like, I remember the first sort of brand that was very prominently gluten-free was Udi's, if you know that brand. But the problem with Udi's was it had egg in it, and I was trying to go completely vegan. So bread at that time was super limiting. But over the years, it's been one of the best times to be vegan and gluten-free because it's just exploded. Like that area of the market is just so exciting now because so many people are either struggling with, dietary issues. And so there's more products for them, or I think people have just realized it's really a market that needs to be larger than it was at that time, which has been so fun for me to explore. But definitely back then it was difficult to find things that made it exciting.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of gluten-free, you'll see something that is gluten-free and then it's loaded with tons of other, things that are maybe not necessarily the best for you, like fillers.
Yeah. And preservatives and all of that. And especially at the time, I was supposed to be doing whole foods, plants diet. So, like whole grains and veggies and fruits. And so a lot of the processed things were not supposed to be in my diet. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey figuring out the right products along the way.
Yeah. Hey, before we continue with the show, I want to talk to you about something that you might not think about too often, but it is vital in keeping you and your family safe, and that's insurance. In today's hectic world, we women have so many roles and things on our plate. Our to-do list seems to get longer and longer. Rachel Davenport, the principal agent at LH Griffith and Company, understands because she is a wife and mother herself. Rachel can assist you with all of your insurance needs, whether it is trying to find the best deals on auto insurance, helping select the most appropriate home insurance coverage, or helping you protect your family with health and life insurance. Rachel does it all. We know what a headache it can be to select the best insurance. So to save yourself precious time and energy, give Rachel Davenport a call today for all your insurance needs. Her number is 864-828-0579. That's 864-828-0579, or find her on Facebook at Rachel Sells Insurance. All her information is in the show notes. Okay, back to the show. Okay, so let's start into, so you started baking when you found this out and you started getting creative with your food. So talk about that journey. So you started just baking muffins?
So piggybacking off of like the prior question, so since food during that time was so limited, I think that's when I really became obsessed with being in the kitchen in general. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to make food that actually tasted good because it could be so limiting at that time to figure a good baked good or, something like that. So I definitely became a bit obsessed with playing with different gluten-free flours and dairy-free chocolate or, different egg forms. So you could do flax eggs, there was just so many different things. And I remember I saw this one app that made these gluten-free and vegan recipes. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is a real world. And literally it became a form of therapy for me. And I remember my parents would always not mess with me when I was in the kitchen because they're like, oh, she's in a zone. She's probably going to be making something right now. And back to my mom, she, when I was growing up, always made these vegan or not vegan. They were not vegan, made banana chocolate chip mini muffins. And so that was kind of something that friends, family always was waiting to come to our house for because they knew, oh, maybe there's going to be muffins today. So when I transitioned to my new diet, I remember I couldn't eat those. And I don't exactly remember the details of how it happened, but that's definitely was the influence on me making banana chocolate chip specifically, and then mini muffins. And then all these years building a recipe that actually was like a really good product. And it started with banana chocolate chip muffin.
The banana chocolate chip, that's what I had. And it was so, like I'm saying, I'm not just saying that. Like it was really, really good because you can like, and it was just like the perfect amount of like banana and chocolate chip. It wasn't overwhelming. It was the texture was really good. It was delicious. And
Nice.
yeah, in your I was reading an article about you. Stated that your husband, or not husband, your dad, my husband was like coughing in the other room. That's working from home. I know everybody can relate, but like he's has a cough, and I'm like hearing him cough in the other room, and I'm like, it's so loud.
Totally get it.
Yeah. So, but your husband, gosh, your dad had a big part in trying your recipes. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's so funny. I was just talking about this the other day about how I don't think I realized that my dad was probably the backbone of this whole project, like without like me even knowing. But now I'm older and I'm like, oh yeah, you were advising me to do X every time I baked and this isn't that. So my dad was always traveling growing up. So he had a job that always would make him leave usually during the week and then he'd come back on the weekends. But before he would leave, he'd be like, so are you going to make me muffins before I leave so I can have a snack or before I go into the office or whatever. So not only would that make me start baking, but then he would try the muffins and he'd be like, oh, this batch was so good this time. Like, what did you do differently? And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, and he's like, did you write it down? And so I would write down, like, okay, this week I put flaxseed in it, or this week I baked them for X amount of time instead of this many minutes. And, he was always just saying these little details along the way, which I didn't even think that, like, I never thought I would be selling muffins, but he would always be like, oh, one day you're going to bake and you're going to sell. And I was like, no, like, when is that going to happen? And yeah, just throughout the process, he definitely was helping me build the product without me even realizing that it was like such a consistent positive influence on what I was doing.
That's so awesome. Sounds like you have really supportive parents.
Yeah, they're really like the best. And
Yeah.
I actually, as you get older, I'm constantly so grateful to just have them because you really start realizing things as you get older and they're around through everything that I do. And they always want to hear about like what I've changed or what I'm doing. And it's definitely been one of the biggest things that I've really started realizing and not taking for granted as I've gotten older.
Yeah, I think it definitely maturity, growing older, you're like, oh, they've done a lot for me, but you have such that's awesome. I love to hear that. So you went to, okay, so through the process that you decided to go to college, were you still baking?
So I was baking pretty much from the second, I was baking a lot when I was a little kid. So I think that was already a curiosity that I was dealing with. But when I was 16 through now, I was constantly baking. So by the time I got into college, not my freshman year because I was really sick my freshman year.
Okay.
And I was actually at Penn State. And then sophomore year, I transferred from Penn State to College of Charleston. And that's when I had the space to bake and I had a kitchen. And so I would always be baking something like post classes, post essay, post homework for my roommates or for myself. And it was obviously always vegan and gluten-free. And I remember that throughout college, whether it was sophomore year through senior, banana chocolate chip was always something I was still working on. Those muffins, it was something I'd give to friends. If somebody helped me study with something, I would give them, some muffins, or if it was somebody's birthday, the muffins were always around. So
Yeah.
it was definitely baking all throughout college. More for fun. I was still everything up until this point. I never even thought that they were going to be sold. So it was all just for fun and / therapy.
Yeah, baking is definitely therapy. So, what did you go to school for?
It changed a billion times, but
Okay.
finally, when I was a junior, very last minute, I turned into a comm major, and that's when everything clicked. Like everything made sense once I became a comm major, and every class was interesting to me. All my projects made sense. I've always been a writer of some form, even when I was really little. So I was writing papers all the time. I was doing speeches, things like that. And it just really made sense to me. I was like, oh, this is why I'm in college. I feel like I was exploring so much up until that point. And so, yeah, communication really locked me in after that of just figuring out really my interests.
So
But once
interesting.
again, didn't plan on having the muffin company. So, it brought me here in some fashion.
Right. Well, I think that's important that you said that because especially like the younger, even now, it's like when people are thinking about quote unquote, starting over or changing paths, it's like, but I did that for so long. Or that's, am I a failure for changing my interest and starting something new? And I think your story is a lesson like, okay, you changed paths a couple of times, which I think is normal when you're going to college, but I think it's a normal thing in life. You're not tied down to one thing just because you thought you liked it before or just because you've done it so long. It's okay to change paths. It's okay to be like, okay, I did that. Now I'm moving on to something totally different and, explore that. You don't have to be stuck to one thing.
And I feel like just as you're getting older, I really just feel like sometimes I'm sitting back and watching my life unfold in front of me. And I feel like I've been able to watch change and growth in such a literal way. I don't really even know how to explain it other than that. And so every year I was going through so many different health issues. And then off of that, exploring my interests. And I think college was, I was always a student growing up. I always loved school in some fashion. I've always loved to learn. I've loved intellectual things. So school for me has always been sort of a path of exploration. And I think, transferring and whatever, just growing up, I was kind of just really needing to explore what I liked. And so I was doing anthropology at one point, I was doing hospitality at one point, and then, comm came and that led me into doing social media jobs and internships and PR related things. So all these aspects, which allowed me to have experience and then I think pushed me into whatever I'm doing now. So it was a lot of change, but good change that helped me like really realize what I liked to do, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And I think those are, important steps into your life, like anthropology and doing all these other things. It's like, okay, you're not doing that now, but that's great conversation maybe to connect with somebody, or you learn something in that aspect that applies to what you're doing now, especially with the social media and stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
all that stuff needed to happen to bring me to this point. So those things, those experiences were just as important.
That is the best way to say it. Like everything happened for a reason, that's how I really view life. Like all these steps happen for a reason to bring me to whatever I'm doing now, wherever I'm at now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's get into when you started selling these muffins, when you're like, okay, well, let's post it. Let's share what I'm offering. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I think around probably like later high school. No, I would say early college. That's when I think me making these muffins was so consistent that everybody around me knew like I made these muffins, right? So friends, family, etc., friends of friends. It was just like, I think you have qualities about you. And I think people knew that was something that I did. Like people would come over and just like when I was younger with my mom, people would be like, okay, are there muffins here? Or if not muffins, I would be baking a ton of things.
Right.
But I think in college, it really started getting solidified what my recipe was. Then moving on to end of college, I graduated in the middle of the pandemic. No, the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh,
So pandemic hits. I was supposed to move to New York to do the internship that I did the prior summer as my main job, which I was working for a startup at the time. It was this awesome experience. So I really thought that I was going to move to New York City. And, that's a common path for my town because we're from Connecticut and it's a commuter town that goes to New York City. So most people work there. Most of my friends now live there. So I thought, and you really think what you're going to do in life. Like when you're younger, you're like, oh, this is what I'm doing. And everything changed. The pandemic hits, the world shuts down. I'm like, no way I'm moving to New York. It was such a like shit show at the time, and so everything sort of shifts and I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? So I go home to Connecticut post college. And that's when my boyfriend and I actually started doing social media and stuff for other people. And it was the first time I realized you could like make money on your own, as funny as that sounds, but I'd always done things for other people's companies. And I had never realized, entrepreneurial efforts are part of my path or could be part of my path. So that was the first experience I had with, okay, you can make this and you can sell it. So then I was alone in my house, like I would say winter of 2020. My boyfriend was gone. My parents were actually here in South Carolina. My friends were all kind of in their homes because the pandemic was super just like not fun in Connecticut at that time. So I was really alone and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, and so many people had told me to sell the muffins at that point. People were like, when are you going to sell them? And I was actually posting a lot on my personal Instagram of like my vegan recipes. And I was really getting involved with social media pretty much from the time the pandemic hit up until that point. So people like really knew I was vegan and really knew I was gluten-free. And so I think people started getting a little bit interested. So by the time I was ready to post, it just happened. I was like, you know what? If nothing happens from this, it's whatever. But if something does happen, it's time for me to do it. So I posted on my story one night and I was like, would anybody buy these? And it was my muffins. And that day I had like 30 DMs and I was like, okay, here we go. It's time for, it's the muffin moment is ready. I don't know. Like so many years people had told me, and then it just finally made sense.
Oh my gosh. So when you posted that and you're getting like 30 DMs, were you like, oh my God, like, were you shocked?
It was just this really weird thing. Like you've been doing something for so long and you've always had questions about, oh, would I sell these muffins one day? And people have told you to, and then you actually do it. And it's like, oh, okay, this could be a thing. So I think I was definitely shocked. And I was also like super excited because it was something I never really realized would happen. And then it's happening, you know?
Right.
It's just super crazy.
You went, was it hard? Okay. So initially when you're starting this business and you're like, I don't even know, let's figure this out. We're going to offer this. We're going to sell it. When you have these 30 direct messages coming in, like, I want some, I'm sure, was this like the most amount of muffins you've ever made before?
Oh, for sure. I definitely at one time. And also like when you start a business, not realizing you're going to start a business, it's kind of just like, we got to figure every detail out. What's the packaging? What are we going to say, you know, in a note when we give it to people, or is our product ready? And, you know, I was baking so much during the pandemic that was definitely when I felt really comfortable with my recipe and it was becoming really consistent. And I had been kind of doing some time in the winter at my best friend's mom's bakery restaurant. And I was in the kitchen for the first time. So she was or a professional kitchen. And she was giving me so many tips about how to, you know, refine your recipe. And the first time I ever really got comfortable and was like, you know what, my recipe is ready, is when she told me I needed to convert a lot of my recipe to grams, which I'll explain. Grams, if you go from like a quarter cup, it's never going to be specific. So when you take your bananas and turn it into grams, instead of just throwing like 3 bananas or 4 bananas into you know, I was really able to make a consistent product over and over again once I figured out, you know, like the metrics. And so anyways, the product was figured out and I can't even remember what the question was, but
no, that's so interesting because that's something I would never think, like 3 bananas are 3 bananas. But now baking, especially, you have to be so specific. It's not like cooking a dash here or a dash there or whatever. It's like you have to really be specific. And like that just blows my mind. I didn't even think about that. Like you have to.
I didn't either.
Yeah. So that was a learning experience. Okay. So then you get these orders and then were you like, okay, how are we going to make this happen? Or did you just go back to that professional kitchen and just like make a crap ton of muffins?
I definitely was like, you know, everything just starts now. And I didn't even think about it. I was just like, okay, X amount of people want this. We're going to play with X amount of muffins and see if that works for an order. And then, you know, it happened really organically. And I think it was the first time I really realized like, okay, this is what I'm meant to do, because the right things started to fall into place. Like nothing felt forced. So that was the first time in my life things were flowing. And that's kind of always a joke between me, my boyfriend and I, because I'm like, if it's not flowing, then it's not working. And so, and it makes sense because I felt like a lot of the times in my life prior, I was kind of forcing things a lot. Oh, if this doesn't work out, I'm not going to be okay. And for this, everything would flow. So if I had orders, I kind of just felt it was so natural to me of what to do. And it was the first time I didn't have to fight to figure something out, you know? And so figuring out orders was pretty natural, and just the whole experience felt natural. It was a crazy thing for me. It just felt like what I was meant to be doing.
Yeah, totally. But I think it's really cool to hear. And I think you're like, okay, so we're going to see if anybody wants these, and then we're going to go from there. I think sometimes if you're like, there's something that's called paralysis by analysis. I don't know if you've heard this term, or
I don't know.
any listeners, but it's basically you become paralyzed because you overanalyze everything and you can't come to a solution. So it's like, okay, I want to start this business, but you're so caught up in the name of the business that you're like, I don't know the name. I don't know the name. I can't find the name. Will this work? Will that work? And then you overanalyze, just an example here, you overanalyze the name of your business that you come to a point where you're like, okay, I can't figure this out, so I'm not even going to make a decision. But it's paralysis by analysis. But I think that's so, going back to what you said, it's like you didn't give yourself time to overthink. You're like, okay, this is going to happen, and then we're going to make decisions. I think that's sometimes that's the best way to go. Be like, okay, let's throw it at the wall. We'll see what sticks, and what doesn't, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm definitely pretty over analytical. Sometimes I'm a Virgo myself. I don't know if you're into horoscope stuff, but it's a very analytical sign. So there are times where I can, over obsess over something. But I think, as I was saying, this just flowed for me. And so the name came naturally. Like, orders were a natural process of making them and then selling them. Obviously, there's been so much to learn. I mean, It's been the most exciting process because you have to shift and pivot and change pretty much every day in order to, do the new changes that happen with your business. But I think just the process of getting into it did happen pretty naturally for me. But it was all very exciting during it. And so if anything was stressful, it was exciting. You know what I mean? And that's kind of still how it is. If things stress me out, I'm like, I'm just grateful to be doing this. It's something that I really love. And there's nothing that gets me happier than like giving other people these muffins. Like, I'm not even kidding. It doesn't matter the circumstance. Like, it's just something that genuinely brings me joy, and it's my work. And it just, I can't even believe that I get to do, that as one and the same. So
yeah, I want to commend you for that, because at the event you were like talking about the product. You could tell you were excited about the product. You weren't just like this is something I created. Like, I don't know, science fair, like, this is my science project. No, you're like, this is, and you were willing to talk and wanted to talk to people. I thought that was so great. Going back to, you're welcome. Going back to the name came naturally to you. Okay. So Muffin Drop, how did that come to be?
Yeah. So it's so funny because I was doing the Charleston City Market downtown for a while, and my tablecloth says the Muffin Drop on it. So my favorite thing was everybody would walk by and everybody would have like a different interpretation of what that meant. But when it started, it was really just a super intuitive thing. Like, I was dropping muffins. So I would release on my story, here's the drop. And so I would outline how many muffins came per order, what the flavor was, when they could pick up. And that was the drop. And so I was like, okay, I'm dropping muffins. So it's the Muffin Drop. And that was what it was. But now my muffins are little drops. So I call them Muffin Drops. So it all worked in the end. And I still release my orders and my muffins in drops. So it's the Muffin Drop because we're dropping muffins.
That's what I thought, because I was like, so they're mini, but you call it's like, that's what I thought, like a drop of muffins. Now, okay, how did you come up with these drops of muffins or mini muffins? Like, I think that's genius because they're so easy to just like pop in your mouth and like have a snack. And then especially at that event we were at, it's like, you don't want to eat this whole honking muffin in front of like everybody or whatever. You can just like pop it into your mouth. So how did you decide on making a smaller version of a muffin?
Yeah, there's been so many years where people were like, so when's the big muffin going to come out? And I'm like, it's never going to happen. Like, as in, not like, people don't frequently say that, but as in, it's obviously come up. But for me, I've always just loved the convenience factor of a smaller product. Like, just as you're saying, you don't want to be like scarfing down a huge muffin at an event. For me, it's like nice for a snack on the go. I feel like people nowadays are moving so quickly and they've got quick, fast lifestyles. So for me, it just makes sense. It's a product for the time that we're in. And I like snacking. I'm a big snack person, especially being vegan and gluten-free. Like, it's a lifestyle and diet that you kind of always have to be just having little snacks here and there to keep up with your digestion and everything. So for me, it was just a really natural product to make small. I don't know. I never wanted it to be larger because of convenience. And I think it's fun to have something small. I feel like there's a psychological thing where you're like, you know what, I'll just have a few and you feel better about yourself. I don't know. I just really like the mini aspect to it.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like, okay, like I have a sweet tooth and I want to satisfy the sweet tooth. You're like, but I don't necessarily want the whole thing. But it's like going back to the diet culture, like, oh, I totally just sneezed. I couldn't hold that. Thank you. I couldn't hold that one back. Like you're like, I don't want to eat the whole thing. And it's like, okay, well, that satisfied my sweet tooth. And I really am not hungry for the whole thing. I just wanted, a couple bites and, to help with that craving. So I think that's a really interesting point that you made. So I love that. Okay. So now we're going to kind of get into, I have some like kind of more fun questions, like, oh, give me the dirty on that. But how has that social media management, has that helped you with where you're at now in your business?
Yeah. So I'm connecting to the charger. Sorry for the location switch up.
You're fine.
Yeah. So pretty much social media has been the largest aspect to creating and starting the whole business. Like if Instagram didn't exist, neither would the company. And something that a lot of people don't know is that before I even had the name, the Muffin Drop, before I even had the Instagram, the Muffin Drop, I started the company through Emily Eldh, my personal Instagram, because to me, it just made so much sense. You have already a built out following. Why would I make an Instagram when I've got 0 followers off of that? So I really kind of, I asked my friends and family, I was like, are you interested in this product? And it happened that a lot of them already knew about it, but really were interested. And then their friends became interested. So I built the following before I even had an account through my personal Instagram, which I was very surprised how well that worked, because it's not like I have a huge following or anything, but I think in general in life, I keep my friends pretty close, and like the people who were following me were interested.
Right.
So Instagram is absolutely major. And I love people and I love community and I love networking. And I think a major thing was me constantly talking to people through DM and, taking orders through DM. So, Instagram, I love you out here. You've really helped me fully start a business. And literally up until this past week, I was doing everything through Instagram. And now we finally have the website, which that's an amazing vehicle for, transitioning. But yeah, social media has been absolutely epic. And then people, sorry to keep going, but to piggyback, the reason the Muffin Drop really started was because Instagram stories. So I think people like something that kind of can be a little trendy. So I would wrap these boxes super cute. And back when I started, I had just graduated college. So I knew a lot of people here still. And it kind of just took off in College of Charleston that everybody would order and then post on their story. Ooh. So through stories, it was an organic growth, and it would get like one person could Instagram and I could get 5 DMs after that. So, or it could be like 10 DMs or it could be 20, you know what I mean? So Instagram definitely has been the biggest vehicle for all of the growth, I would say, or majority.
Like I feel like social media is a double-edged sword, and like, oh my gosh, the algorithm. And then on the other side, it's like, that's how I do so much of my business is through Instagram. And that's how I do a lot of my sales, and got a lot of I think it's through all social media. I've gotten all my coaching clients, and it's so true. And we get hung up on, I love that you said that. You're like, I started my business. I started with social media. I started with stories. And then you just got a website. Sometimes we think we have to have, the business cards right away or the website right away. And it's really like, no, you can start where you're at with what you have. We were talking about this in the very beginning. Like I started this podcast in my closet. I had to commit to myself on my phone, on my memory, my voice notes. And it's like, just start. Don't overthink it. Just start. And then when you get to a point where you want to grow, then get what you need, or, like with the website and everything. So I love that you said that. I think that's great.
And also I really I had the website for a long time, like not live. So I had designed it and I, had it there. But for me, I just felt like I needed to have that continuous personal conversation with the following or people who wanted to order. It was really something that I felt like I needed to DM with people. I needed to be in constant conversation in order for people to really care, because I care so much and I care about people and I care about the product. So I really loved talking with people so much via DM and just constantly being in that conversation. And it was really a necessary part for the growth. That when I finally felt like I was ready for the website, at that point, I felt like there was enough knowledge of what I was doing that it was comfortable to have an outlet that people could just go on and then order. But up until that point, I really felt like the dialogue was really necessary via social.
So true. There's such connection in being able to like message. And then you said you started like on your personal page, like they know who Emily is, the story behind the Muffin Drop. And I feel like there's such connection that can be created that way as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a couple more questions here. What are some of your business goals that you have right now?
Yeah, I've got a lot. So it's so funny. Like the new year came and I was trying to not be like, okay, now the new year's here. So you have to have all of these goals. And then in that process, I got stressed that I was like not goaling or whatever. And then obviously things started to flow once I stopped overthinking of everything.
Right.
And some goals came. So I think that really like, I would love to be a retail good. So I think in whatever the 5-year, I'm not a big planner. Once again, I flow with things and it's the only way I know how. But really I would like to be a retail good. So in whatever the way that manifests. And I think that I have a lot of really, really cool ideas that will hopefully come to fruition in the next few months in order to scale the business. And so we're kind of really at an initial stage right now in our conversation, but I just feel very excited and confident in a product that I have and really would like to grow it and see it not only in Charleston, but in other places around the US. So
yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you were thinking about going mainstream and having big businesses like Costco or Amazon or Whole Foods. Is there any specific place you're like, oh my gosh, that would be a dream?
Oh my gosh. Well, really, I feel like gourmet food stores in general are like something that I've always been obsessed with just like as a passion. Like I've loved exploring all of the small brands because especially or not necessarily even small, they can be huge brands, but in gourmet food stores to even places like Whole Foods, they have so much vegan and gluten-free stuff. So I think creating a network in that realm, that would be amazing. But Whole Foods is always a dream. Like how could it not be? That has been the mecca for so much of my health related process of finding, really genuine and well-made products. So if that could happen in this lifetime, we would be absolutely obsessed.
Yeah, we're manifesting here, baby.
We're manifesting.
I love
manifesting.
It. Dream big. It's like no cap, like dream big. I love absolutely. That. So are you, okay, so you're in the Charleston area. Are you at the point where you're shipping yet?
So we do ship, but we mainly do a local sort of ordering. So really I've been focused on the community a ton. Family and friends, like honestly, so many people do request, but I'm only one person, so I can only handle so much at one time. And, I really push it to the farthest extent that I really can, but we focus mainly on local, but I think this year will totally turn into a major shipping aspect of the company. And yeah, it'll be a huge part of growth in order to get it out to other places. So that will definitely be another avenue and there'll be local and hopefully maybe we have the team expanded. So yeah, everything is kind of, we're just building day by day,
day by day, one step at a time. Because I know there are listeners like, oh, I need to get my hands on these muffins. Yes, you do. And it's coming. It's just follow. That's what I'll finish the interview with. You'll get to share your social media and everything. But a couple more questions real quick. What is the worst thing about being a business owner? Like, or what has been the hardest part right now?
Honestly, I feel like the worst is like that it can sound negative, but for me, I think the hardest part is the fact that it is constant. So every single second, but it's also so part of the excitement. Like I'm, once again, somebody who's quite obsessive with things that I'm passionate about. So it really comes naturally, but there's obviously such a demand every single day that you've got to keep up with. But it's really an exploration of, and I've really been thinking about this lately. It's a really big exploration on like personal development.
Right.
Like I've learned so much about myself, and you wouldn't even expect that because it's business oriented, but it's also so people oriented, and so much of your energy and your ability in order to do it. So I think just the fact that like every single second, you got to be figuring out different pieces. But once again, it ties into how exciting the whole process is. And like, I would never want to be doing anything else,
Right.
So it's difficult as hell, but it's also like the most exciting. So they really are tied completely hand in hand.
Yeah, it is true. It's not like when you have your own business, they're like, oh, okay, 9 to 5 and I'm clocking out and, I'm going to answer my emails tomorrow once I'm back at my desk. It's like, no, it's kind of like, whenever you can, and especially building a business and trying to make it profitable and all of that, you're like, okay, you feel that constant need, like to be doing something. So it's a double-edged sword of like, I want to grow, but then also there is so much beauty in what you were saying is like, okay, just letting it flow, it doesn't have to necessarily be done today. Tomorrow's a new day. And so what is the best thing about being a business owner?
Completely ties into the worst thing. You know what I mean? Like I really think all of the attributes of it are completely almost one and the same, because it's the fact that you can make your own schedule. It's the fact that you can make all the rules, like it's your rule book, and it ties into the previous question. Since it's your rule book, everything falls on you, but I think all of that is the best part, because I'm somebody who is pretty naturally self-motivated, because I was saying how much I love the product. So it's really something that I love doing every second, every day. And yeah, I think I just love having the business and all of the parts together, whether it's challenging, whether I'm freaking the hell out, or whether I'm like so excited, it just goes back to anytime I can get the muffins to somebody, it brings me joy. And it doesn't matter if I have to go through hell to get there, like any day, it's still going to bring me light at the end of the day. So I think that the best part are all the parts, even if it's hard.
Yes, it's true. I don't know if do you watch The Office?
Oh, I love The Office.
Oh my gosh, Michael Scott. I think it was at a job interview and they're like, well, what is your downfall? Like, what are some things you need to work on? He's like, well, I love people too much. I work too hard. And they're like, that's actually positive, Michael. But it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. With the business, I mean, it is that's a true answer. It's like, okay, there's good that comes with the bad too. So before we're going to do a giveaway here, but before we do that, where can people find you? Give us your social media, give us your website, all the things.
Cool. So website is live. It's www.themuffindrop.com. Instagram, it's at the Muffin Drop. And then if you go on Facebook, you can just type in the Muffin Drop. I'm there as well. And yeah, so pretty much consistently, or no, it is consistent across all of the URLs, et cetera. It's the Muffin Drop. So
the Muffin Drop. I love that. That's awesome. Okay. So we are going to do a giveaway. So you are giving your classic. Tell us about your classic flavor.
Yes. So that is the initial flavor, which we started with. So that was the thing that started everything before there were other flavors. It's banana chocolate chip. It's made up of the major ingredients, which are almond flour, coconut flour. There's some flaxseed in there, sweetened with really good things like coconut sugar and dairy-free chocolate chips. So really like nourishing ingredients. That's kind of really the mission of everything. So plant-based. So it's really good for you, as well as being just super delicious. So yeah, you'll get the initial classic flavor, which will kind of always be our main person. What's thing I'm trying to say. Our main product.
Main product. Yeah, that was like your heart and soul. That's what you began with. I love that. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a screenshot of this episode and you're going to tag at the Muffin Drop and myself at Lauren.Kubat on Instagram. All that stuff is in the show notes. And if you're like, where are the show notes? Like if you scroll up on wherever you're listening, there's like this down, there should be like this down arrow. And you're going to hit that and all the show notes are there. But if you forget, it's at the Muffin Drop and Lauren.Kubat. So you're going to screenshot, tag us, just tell us what you loved about the episode or what you're looking forward to, what product you're looking forward to seeing with the Muffin Drop. But we're going to start there. Simply screenshot the episode, tag the Muffin Drop and myself, just share it on social media and we will pick one winner. So this episode drops, I work quick. So Wednesday is the 19th.
Wow.
So we will run this until, let's do the 24th, January 24th. So if you're listening from January 19th, 2022 to January 24th, 2022, take a screenshot, tag us, and you can win a dozen of the delicious banana chocolate chip mini muffins, mini drops. I keep wanting to call them mini muffins, but they're
Muffin drops.
Muffin drops. There we go.
It's currently getting trademarked. So hopefully we get muffin drops and that will be our product,
That's so exciting. Awesome. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you, Emily, for sharing your story with us.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so fun. I hope you have like an awesome podcast from this.
Yes, we will. We will. Even with like the sneezing and my husband coughing and
hey, we love it.
All the things. That's real life, right, guys? So remember to screenshot this episode, tag us, and you've got this. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you love this episode, make sure you are subscribed so you know when more episodes come available. My goal is to inspire others to become their vision, and one way to get the word out is with reviews. I would really appreciate it if you left an honest review on iTunes, and it would mean so much to me. Thanks again, and remember to go after the life you want. Bye, guys.